Thank heavens for final seasons. They come in like Oprah handing out gifts. Moira, Luke, Rita, look under your seats. You get a plot, you get a plot, everybody gets a plot. Not just a plot, but in Moira's case, also some righteous dialogue that felt like a character had blinked awake after seasons spent locked under an enchantment. Moira speaking the words, "I cannot live your life anymore" to June was the indication that broke the spell. After episodes spent in the background worrying about June, looking out for June, and caring for June's infant daughter, Moira asserted herself as a survivor of Gilead in her own right. But before we get into episode 4, if you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button, drop a like and comment on the video, and if you're able, please sign up for channel memberships for exclusive content, which really helps us out. Anyway, let's get back to this one. So, Samira Wiley beautifully underplayed her performance in the scene I just mentioned, in which Moira volunteered for the Jezebel's mission. Unlike the cocky belligerence of the Mayday's leader's speech, Moira spoke simply and decisively. There was no stridency in her words, just the truth tinged with sensible fear. As a former Jezebel, this mission was hers, until it was June's. Elizabeth Moss played the hell out of her scenes in which an increasingly unhinged June ran around that Mayday outpost like she was John Rambo instead of a heavily traumatized former literary editor. Her "I demand to speak to the manager" mania was a bravely unflattering look for the lead character, but a necessary one. It led Luke and Moira to call her on her bullshit and claim their own stories. Luke, a bereaved parent struggling with the guilt of not having been able to protect Hannah, Moira as a rape survivor whose sexuality makes her a gender traitor punishable by mutilation in the eyes of the Gilead, and both of them as BIPOC characters with every reason to go to war against that racist regime. Also brought off the bench in promotion was Rita, who, like June and her mother in Train, had something flat out good happen to her. Years of watching this show and its cruel, hope-dashing twist has turned fans into shivering, timid strays who shrink away from outstretched hands in the flinching expectation of pain. But it's starting to look as though we can finally trust again. Not everything is going to hit us. Sometimes a warm bed and a belly rub is really what's on offer. That's what we got with Rita, who blew past Serena and into her sister's arms to give us the second of this season's emotional family reunions. Not only that, but it was thanks to Rita and screenwriters J.C. Heydrich and Bruce Miller that we had a rare and useful insight into the character of Nick Blaine. Nick's safest place to be answers about his new Bethlehem commander status were water in the desert to those of us still wondering who this character really is. With Rita's help and the pithy dialogue, it makes sense that Nick was just a lost kid when this all started, and his every move since then, aside from the foolhardy risks he took for June, have all been about sheltering from the Gilead storm. He certainly isn't in the commander game for the same frat boy reasons as newcomer Commander Bell, who arrived on screen this week in the unimprovable form of Timothy Simons. If this show is going to invent a character just so we could watch them please get blown to high hell by the Mayday plan, it couldn't have been done better than Bell. In just 2 short scenes, he was quickly established as a misogynist sadist who derives his power not from virility but from debasing and abusing women. Commander Wharton continues to prove himself a different prospect. He's nice, a home cook who loves his daughter, is kind to his son-in-law, supports women's political influence, and doesn't frequent Jezebels? What is this man doing as a high commander? His status in Gilead, though, means that despite every word he says, it still feels as though with every step she takes towards him, Serena is walking into the open jaws of a crocodile. If Wharton does turn out to have a heart, then he's not the only high commander with one now. Lawrence's scenes with little Angela and the one with her mother Janine were a reminder of his character's complicated decency, even as one of the decorated snakes in Gilead's writhing pit. His continuing love for Eleanor, my real wife, distaste for Naomi, a real cunt, and his promise to Angela that one day she would be able to read A Little Princess for herself showed Lawrence's best side. Just as those tender scenes showed off Bradley Whitford's inviolable range beyond his usual glib comedic delivery. The closing credits storyline once again showed us the man who, instead of turning in the 86 children being smuggled out of Gilead via his house in Season 3, gathered them around him to read Treasure Island. In summary, promotion gave everybody something good, and none was better than that final, beautifully acted scene between Luke and June. Now that June's dropped her desperate, condescending, yet understandable attempts to protect everybody, they're going to fight together. Am I stupid for feeling hopeful about their chances?